I don't want anybody to be under any illusions here, but there's not a chance. Now, should Joe Biden be primaried anyway? Yes, he should.
Oh, please, not this again. Remember that time a while back when a bunch of anti-Democrat leftists like Jimmy Dore and Brianna Joy Gray trotted out the idea that we should hashtag force the vote? The master plan went something like this. Threaten to withhold votes for Nancy Pelosi's House speakership unless she promises to hold a vote for Medicare for all. Then, when the vote inevitably fails, we know who in Congress is bad. Essentially, progressives are supposed to expend all our political capital and make ourselves look ineffectual and anti-democrat, just so we can watch the people who said they'd vote against Medicare for all vote against Medicare for all. Well, it looks like Kyle Kulinski is back for the sequel.
The Overton window keeps shifting further and further and further right. And so Republicans go off to Cuckooville, and then Democrats shift further right and meet them halfway to Cuckooville, so Democrats are proudly half cuckoo. And every election cycle, that repeats. Something needs to be done to break the fever and shift the conversation. And one of the ways to do that is a high-profile primary against Biden in 2024. Now, don't tell me, well, that's going to hurt Biden in a potential re-election campaign. Total bullshit. The Republicans in 2016 had the most vicious primary you could ever imagine. Donald Trump saying Ted Cruz's dad killed JFK. People talking about other people's wives. I wouldn't spill the beans on her. Debates where they bring up dick size. They're at each other's throats. It was vicious. And then Donald Trump won the presidency in 2016.
This might be the worst argument I've ever heard from Kyle, which, first of all, props to him because it's a lot less unreasonable than some of the fools I've covered on this channel. Still, there's a tiny problem with this comparison. Perhaps Republican voters are more likely to fall in line behind an authoritarian strongman than Democratic voters behind Sleepy Joe. If I remember correctly, Trump's brand is all about attack. Any Republican who remotely disagrees with him is called a never-Trumper, diagnosed with Trump derangement syndrome, and cast off as a social pariah. You can be labeled a rhino for things like opposing foreign election interference, denouncing the January 6th insurrection, refusing to help steal the election, or voting for an infrastructure bill. It doesn't matter how fiscally or socially conservative you are, unless you're willing to follow Trump unquestioningly, Republican voters will punish you. On the leftish side, we've got fractures within fractures. We've got our Bernier busters, made up largely of the same crowd as the Force the Vote mob, or worse, anti-electoralists. Many left populists are so focused on criticizing Democrats to distinguish themselves from liberals, they basically become Republican assets for voter suppression.
Or you're just a vote blue no matter who stooge for the Democrats who blame the left every time terrible candidates like Hillary Clinton lose.
Fuck you! I'm not here to assign blame to progressive politicians or defend establishment Democrats. Half my channel was dedicated to shitting on identity politics and culture war distractions. The problem isn't with leftists being too radical, it's leftists who lose the will to fight fascism just because they don't get their way. There's just no guarantee Democrats can coalesce around a single candidate the way Republicans can, unless we're all on the same page at the beginning.
So what do you do to shift the conversation? What do you do to let everybody know there's another perspective out there? You primary Biden from the left. I would take a candidate like a Nina Turner.
Nina Turner? Nina Turner? This bitch couldn't even win a congressional seat in Georgia, despite having twice the budget of her primary opponent. Then she went off on a sore loser rant about evil money, opening herself up to bogus claims of anti-Semitism. And you want her to primary Uncle Joe? Look, I really wanted Nina Turner to win, but let's face it, she's unelectable. Unlike Bernie, who has friends even amongst the establishment, Nina has all the cards stacked against her. She's inflammatory, anti-establishment, left-wing, and yes, I'll say it, being an ugly black woman really makes it difficult. Say what you will about corruption and dark money, Shontel Brown beat Turner in large part because she's just a lot cuter. I'll get into it more later, but if we're going to do a primary challenge, it had better be a strong one.
Run her against Biden, and I'd have Nina go out there, advocate all the policy stuff she already advocates for, Medicare for all, free college, living wage, end the war, so on and so forth, all that stuff. but I'd have her go out there and say, actually, I'm the moderate. I'm the centrist. Joe Biden's the extremist, and Donald Trump is the extremist. These people are way far to the right of the American people. He couldn't even get Build Back Better done when the goddamn bill polls at like 80%. I will say, the other downside of this is, which is maybe why Nina shouldn't be the one to do it. We could have that conversation, but whoever does primary Biden would be cast out as a total pariah moving forward.
Really? That's the biggest downside you can see? That a single person will get cast out of the party? Sorry, man, but this is just how politics works. You don't sign up to be a public servant if you're not willing to sacrifice your public image in order to represent the American people. If you're gonna run a primary, run the damn primary. We'll come up with another candidate if this one sinks. Losing Nina Turner is the least of our worries.
If it's a sufficiently credible challenger, in the sense that maybe they'll rack up 15 or 20% of the Democratic primary vote, that then forces Biden's hand to try to do the come together kumbaya moment. And it may actually force him to be slightly further to the left.
And here's where we come to the blind spot of Kyle Kulinski and the many progressive populists far worse than he is. They're all fucking Leroy Jenkins. They think you can stay in attack mode every second, every hour, every day of every year with no consequences whatsoever. Kyle just said he'd be happy if a primary challenger received 15 to 20% of the votes. But in fact, that would be a political disaster for the left. See, the mainstream media still controls a large portion of the nation's Democratic audience. We saw it with Afghanistan and again with inflation. What voters think is fundamentally shaped by media narratives, and the media is not known to be kind to the left. So let's think about how CNN would cover Kyle's ideal scenario. Sure, you might get some issue coverage, but we can already pressure Biden without challenging his presidency directly. Cori Bush did it by sleeping on the steps of the Capitol to protest evictions. In fact, media coverage of a primary election is more likely to devolve into horse race speculation. Now think about this. The primary preceding the second term of a president is almost useless. This is where voters are least motivated to vote and where the most radical voters are supposed to be overrepresented. If the left is still only able to muster 20% of the Democratic primary vote, mainstream media will use that to write off progressives as extremists who lack popular support even in the country's nominally left-wing party. I'm thoroughly convinced that challenging Biden in the 2024 Democratic primaries would harm progressives far more than it would help. The best case scenario, as far as I'm concerned, is that whatever sorry fool decides to primary Biden isn't even given the time of day. Because this idea is so bad it actually hurts my brain. I can't believe I have to say this, but losing makes you look bad. No shit. You cannot simply piss off the Democratic Party just so you can force a vote you know you'll lose. You cannot simply attack a president with high approval ratings within the party and not expect to receive blowback. There is no utility either for the left or the Democratic Party in waging a bunch of losing wars. This is just another case of refusing to cooperate just to trigger the libs. I can't believe you're making me defend Joe Biden because I really don't want to. But the fact is, he's the least bad president most of us have had in our lifetimes. I know, hard to believe, but you'd have to go all the way back to Lyndon B. Johnson to find a better one. So right now, my focus is on keeping our guy in office. Remember, the left's first and most important job is anti-fascism. Don't fuck this up. Some extra notes before I wrap this up. I'm criticizing Kyle Kulinski very strongly because I generally like his content, but his takes on political strategy are such pure populist idealism I just had to respond. Also, if a primary challenger does indeed decide to run, I think our best hope is to keep quiet about it and hope mainstream media doesn't feel it's even worth covering. If they do cover it though, we've got to minimize the damage and vote for the challenger. Oh, and if Biden kicks the bucket and it's Kamala running for re-election, we can primary her because she's gonna lose the general either way. I am really interested to hear what you guys think in the comments this time because there may be something crucial that I'm missing.
I'm and I approve this message.